Merry Christmas to everybody. Are you in the spirit? Good. What I'd like to do first of all is just tell you a little bit about myself, my connection, especially and the aluminum tree, go into the company and a few other things, and then get into the heart of it. The thing. I was with Aluminum Specialty for, I don't know how many years, really. I got a 25-year watch, I know that. But I ended up in 1958 being asked by Boulevard, more or less telling me, I'm going to go to Ohio, Western Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and travel that territory. And I came home and told my wife, Jermaine, about it. I was happy. She wasn't. But she came along and brought the 4 children along with us. We eventually moved there and then into Chicago and back to Manitowoc here in a vice president of marketing and sales. But a lot in between there. And that's the interesting part about this tree. And the people that made this all possible, the various people in the different departments and customers, and it's an interesting thing. Aluminum Specialty was a small company in relation to its competition, like in case of Miro. At the time when I started there, we were doing approximately between $6 and $7 million annually. We had basically a houseware line, a toy line, a small toy line, and contract stampings. The exact same thing that Miro had, and we competed with them. They were doing, if I remember that time, it was like $24 million. So you can see the difference. Plus how many other aluminum companies in this area. It was unreal. But I just wanted to find here. Yeah, and it's the nice thing about Aluminum Specialty. Ed Louie, who was treasurer at the time when I interviewed with him, he said, the nice thing about a small company like this is you can get action done fast, things done fast, and your promotions become fast because you're a smaller company opposed to like a Miro, which was a lot bigger. So anyway, I want to introduce an individual that was very important in this whole project. He's sitting right here in front, Dick Thompson. Dick, why don't you stand up quick so everybody can see him. Dick was our chief engineer at the time, and he ended up with Heights, I believe it was, and then eventually with Miro.
Correct.
And retired from Miro. So he's got a lot of experience in a lot of different companies and was excellent person. I just want to explain one other thing before really talking about the aluminum tree. Christmas decoration customers. I'm not talking about the people that sell it, the Walmarts, the Kmarts, and like this. I'm talking about people like yourself sitting right here in the room. When you think back to Manitowoc now, this last Christmas, you saw a lot of decorations. But in reality, what you saw was very little decorations in relation to the size of the city, the size of Manitowoc, the size of the Two Rivers. In general, and this, I used to know the figures down real pat, but it's like 60% of the people, the population, wants nothing to do with Christmas decorations. It's a burden, is what you saw. They celebrate, they all have parties, have good times, but they don't do any decoration. And think about your neighborhood. How many lights do you see on homes? You see some here, there. In a block, you may see 2 lights that are 2 homes that are really lit up. But the majority of the people do very little decorating. And that narrows your potential market in making decorations like this quite a bit smaller. Then in that last 35% that you have, they'll decorate, but not like you see the houses with a lot of lights on it, a lot of decorations, a lot of signs, and everything else. It really gets down to about 10 to 15% of the population that are real fanatics on decorating their homes and doing their homes up at Christmas. And the old saying is, they love this, they go out, they spend the money, and they make sure every year it's a little bit different. Because the last thing you want to do is have you walk into their house again this year and say, oh, I see you got the same decorations up you had last year. They're too proud of it. Say what? We love them. I wish there were more that would go out and really buy decorations. But it's a very small amount of people that do that. So with that in mind, the aluminum Christmas tree, and the thing about this that I can't understand, is this aluminum tree that keeps going on and on and on. The story of it, which is really interesting. And I mean, we've had national television in town here, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, I don't know who, and all of us. We've got New York Times, newspapers like this. And just about 2 days ago, I got a phone call from Maureen O'Donnell. I'm with the Chicago Sun-Times. I said, great. I said, I want to talk to you about the aluminum Christmas tree. I said, right. She said, I don't write on it or anything else. I write obituaries for the Sun-Times. I research obituaries. I said, wait a while. What's the connection here? She said, well, I got an article here, an obituary, and it's on a Stephen, I can't really pronounce it, Randall, like his last name. Founder of 56-year-old Rydell manufacturer and inventor of the aluminum Christmas tree, died at 94. I just talked to Dick. He doesn't remember the name. As she said, when children of people that have passed away, when they write the obituary, sort of embellish it a little bit. And you go through and read this real fast, and one of the interesting things that Dick agrees with me, said here, in 1958 he incorporated Rydell Manufacturing and moved to a 20,000 square foot plant in West Chicago in order to produce aluminum Christmas trees. Between 1958 and 1962, Rydell manufactured millions of the iconic trees. Production ran 24 hours a day, utilizing Mexican-American labor and German-American tool makers, plus a lot of other things. But it's amazing how this thing just doesn't go away. It comes back and back. And really, it's a fun story, interesting story. The real true story, as far as aluminum specialty goes, and the aluminum tree, starts with Harold Camp, who was the toy and Christmas decoration buyer at Ben Franklin stores in Chicago, in West Plains, Illinois. Every year, we would have a Christmas party for the Montgomery Ward people, the housework people, the decoration, the toy buyers, on a Thursday. On a Friday, we'd go out to West Plains. We'd have a Christmas decoration party there for the Ben Franklin people, two of our largest customers, a group of them. I wasn't there at the time. I was in Ohio, just starting in 1958. Tom Gannon was our vice president of sales at the time. Harold Camp said to him over a cocktail, he said, Tom, I'm going to show you something, but can you stay overnight? And Tom says, yes, sir, I'll stay. What's up? He said, I'm going to show you an aluminum Christmas tree. He said that if you can make it right, this will be the biggest thing on the market next year. I said, what do I got to lose? He stayed over. Went out to the office the next morning on Saturday. Harold had it set up, a 6-foot aluminum tree. This came off of a store, from a retail store that he bought. It wasn't given to him as a sample or anything else. Chicago is a very big city, a very big market for Christmas decorations. They've been known for it. They have contests between the different villages and towns and everything else around Chicago. Suddenly, that year, 1958, this aluminum tree started showing up in people's windows at the, right at the Christmas time. Harold went out and bought one, took it off the office, looked at it. Two things wrong with it. The first thing was a 6-foot tree like this size right here came in a box that was about this high, this wide, and like this. Go away in a variety store, and if you remember back then, Woolworth, Kresge, H.L. Green, all your different 5 and dime stores were the big marketplace for the low volume, high volume, I should say, low price product in general. And we had both of them in town here this way. The other thing, that tree, that 6-foot tree, cost Harold about $125. That's what they were selling for. It turned out this was a company out of Chicago. That's why I say this guy in the obituary here, we never worked with, we never talked to or anything else. Modern Coatings was the company that made this aluminum tree. Don't know what they made other than that. but they had distribution in the Chicago area. Harold said to Tom, if you can take this tree, that 6-foot tree right there, put it in this box, so we can make a big display of it in a 5 and dime store. The customer can come, put it on their arm, and walk out, pay the cash register, and gone. This is December 20th, approximately, whatever it was. He said the other thing you have to do is get that tree down to $25. Retail on cost, retail, from $100, $125 to $25 retail. I picked it up, took it back, and gave it a check. I happened to come in from Ohio the night before, and I went into the office the next morning and ran into Tom and Dick. Tom said to me, what do you think of an aluminum Christmas tree? I said, oh, what? What is it? What are you talking about? He said, I'll show you something. And took me into the meeting and showed me the tree. And this is what Tom said to Dick. Get this thing done, we can show it at the next toy show. Next toy show was March 15th, 75 days away. Here's a product we hadn't seen up to this point. Didn't know anything about, nothing. Lo and behold, Dick and his whole crew, plus everybody else involved in bringing a new product together for a company, got involved. We showed it at the toy show in 1959. We showed a 2-foot, which is right over here in the center, a 4-foot, which is that one right up in the top, the 6-foot over here, but not with the pom-pom top, the straight one, and the 7-foot back in the corner. We priced them out at, we sold these now, was $250 for the 2-foot tree. The 4-foot tree deluxe over there was $450. The 6-foot tree was $9. The 7-foot tree was $11.50. So we had retail price points of $5, $10, $20, $25. Exactly what Harold Camp wanted and laid out for us. How we got it together, I don't know. And I'm not going to tell you about how we did everything because it just take too much time. But the interesting part about it was that when I got back on the road, left the toy show 2 weeks later, I had samples waiting for me to take out and start selling. So it was that fast on December 25th, really, Christmas, going right into selling at the toy show, getting home and having samples, catalogs, and we hit the road. When we hit the road running, at the toy show also, it was interesting. People would walk in and say, hey, what do you got that's new? We got an aluminum Christmas tree. What? They look at you. And some people, oh, that sounds interesting. A lot of the people just thought, come on, you've got to be kidding. You're not for real. They take them in, and there were people, probably more than we wanted at the time, that just simply said, that's not for us. It'll never sell. It's no good. It's not a decoration. There was every kind of excuse you could think of. Then there were people that said, this is what we need. And there it goes right back to that 10% again, that 15% that I talked about. They were the ones that were really interested. They were the ones that had the shops. But they wanted a new product. And that goes right back to decorations again. You want something new every year. So we got this thing going. Went out and tried to sell them. I got thrown out in places. When I say thrown out, not physically. I'd start talking about aluminum tree. You're done. Get out. You've had your chance. You know, this type of thing. And what really happened at the toy show and at the first 90 days after selling, we knew we had a product. We knew we had a successful product, and somebody was going to sell it. We had enough different distribution, different major companies, the Woolworths, the Kresge's, like I said before, like this. But in the process, somebody had to make a decision, and it fell right back on Tom Gannon. John Corson, Billy's dad, who was president of the company, was probably the nicest gentleman you could ever meet. A great person to work for. he depended upon his staff. And they would tell him, and Tom Gannon made the decision. We are going to produce trees to my forecast. We're going to make sure that we have them all through the year. And most importantly, when people come back, if it starts to sell the way we expect it, they're going to want to reorder. And we want to have product here. Set up the old factory, I should say the new factory in the old native building right by the yards, the shipyards. Connected right to our warehouse, brand new warehouse was just built. They got all the machinery we needed. We started producing, hiring gals, and where's, here, right over here. We were just talking before. She worked on the line when she was in college. Worked down here. Also, right, like this. But in the process of it, 24 hours a day, we had a run to produce. And not a small operation. I think we had like 15 winding machines.
We had 40 women on the production line.
40 women. So it wasn't a small operation. 24 hours a day. Now you're producing boxes like this. You have to go somewhere with it. That new warehouse next on 16th Street, that filled up. And that was a 28-foot high building. So we could stack 24 feet high on it. We had every possible space around the town where you could get trees into. We had guys trucking back and forth to works. It was about September, Tom told me. He said, John Corson called him this one day. He says, Tom, I want to see you. Like I say, John was a gentleman. And Tom went into his office, and when you knew John, when he had a little something to talk about, he'd take his time and sort of go like this. He said to Tom, "Do you know what's all in that warehouse out here?" He said, "Yeah, Christmas trees." He said, "Do you know how many are out there?" He said, "I don't know the exact amount, but I know it's full." And he said, "We get a lot of other places around town that are full." He said, "Well, what are you going to do with them? This is September." He said, "We're going to ship them." All of a sudden, like I said, I was in Ohio. I'm on a trip. This is probably in middle of October. I'm in Pennsylvania or someplace. I called Jermaine at home, and she said, "What should I do? I'm getting phone calls. People want to reorder Christmas trees." I said, "Write them down, send them in, call them into the office." And this is the way it started, the reorder business. And all of a sudden, people that threw me out of the office, and I insisted when they threw me out, keep our catalog, keep our prices, here's my phone, because you're going to call me sooner or later. And sure enough, they did. One of the fellows that called me, that threw me out, Herb Feingold in Pittsburgh. I think his company was advancing something, I don't know one of us, but he was a jobber. And we had so many small jobbers at that time. And everybody wanted to be first. And you have every major city had their jobber road, where you had little operations that right next to each other, but also the big one, a Worthington, a Bingham, like this, all the other ones around town. But in the process of this whole thing, all of a sudden, everybody started putting out Christmas trees, Christmas decorations. Everyone had an aluminum tree just about. The ones that didn't have, the ones were calling and needed product right away because people were asking about it. The reorder business came in. Well, I forgot one thing here. John took Tom out of the warehouse and said, "Let's take a look at this. Just make sure you're what you're talking about. You know what the extent is." He said, "I know what it's about. I've been out there. I just see it." We went out to the warehouse. Take a look at it. Here this building is. If you can imagine this room, how many square feet was that? Was that 40?
40.
I think it was 40,000 square feet warehouse that we built at the time. That you got a 40,000 square foot building here, stacked with Christmas trees, up 24 feet high, wall to wall, just enough to get a forklift through. And these are all on pellets like this. And John said, "You're going to get rid of all these?" He said, "Yep," and all the other ones around. John said, "I'll make you a bargain." An agreement. He said, "You get rid of all these, I'm going to throw the biggest Christmas party that this company has ever known." We had the biggest Christmas party. Everything went out. And there was if there was something left over, it was very, very minor. And that was the first year in the Christmas tree business. So now that went from nothing never see it. So all of a sudden, you start to get competition showing up. You start to get lower priced trees, less branches showing up. You get all kinds of things going on. What we had to do was get ready for 1960. Because, you know, when you're in the current year, you're working for the next year. And what we didn't know at the time, in 1958, when we worked on a tree and outselling, we knew about that we were outselling. But modern coatings did. Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. But we didn't know, of course, at the time, was that what was modern coatings doing for 1960? And this is the interesting part, because everything Harold Kent asked, modern coatings did. And they never talked to Harold Kent, but they took care of the box. They came in, instead of having every one of their branches standing up in a platform inside of that box, they worked with the Reynolds Aluminum Company. Reynolds developed foil that you could take, wind your branch, put it in a box like this. Now look at the difference when you see that width of that branch and down. That's how we got into a carton like this, because of these tubes. A patented item it became. But that's the first thing they had. The box all of a sudden came down. Everything Harold they had in 1959 when we were competing with it on it. The only thing they didn't do, and it saved our life, our line, they didn't lower their prices. They kept them up at $75, $100, $125 for a tree. Here we are out there with the same number of branches, everything going on with this. The 2-foot, $5 retail, $10 retail, $19.95 retail, $24.95 retail. And we got the market. We had the market from our toy lines, from our household lines, of the mass merchants like we have today. The same ones that were out there, different names, but we had them. And that made the difference. We could compete with it. So in the meantime, what took place with modern coatings, they started patenting and had patents applied for on this. We came out knockoff. I shouldn't say knockoff. That's not a proper word. Norm is laughing. He knows what I'm saying. We copied is what we did, and we made the trees. And the interesting thing, just to digress on the tree, the makeup of it, is every tree, and this was their main patent that they finally got. They designed that every branch is the same length, no matter where it is on the trunk. But they drilled the trunk in such a manner that you can see through your tree. Each branch comes out and it goes at a different angle, right up to the top. And when we get to the top, you put them all in, you've got a tree. Something that looks like a tree is what it gets down to. So here we are. We copied them. And of course, they were applying for patents. They started dunning us. Hey, you're working against our patents, applying for and so forth. What are you going to do about it? The second year, we didn't do anything. But Tom Gannon, again, having the insight, and he was an excellent person to work for, and he was smart. He started talking to him, modern coatings, and ended up, for the third year, we signed a license with Modern Coatings so that we could produce the trees exactly what they had, what the patent was applied for, and not worry about it. All of our competition didn't do it. So here we are, we're telling everybody, our major customers, you don't have any fear with us. Use us, continue to use us, because we've got the license to do it. The next year, Modern Coatings went out. They were better off just sitting back in their office, collecting the royalties, the way the trees were selling. The other companies, some of the other companies did sign up. Others got out of the business. But can you imagine? I don't know how many trees did we manufacture over the years. Over 1 million trees. I mean,
it was by 60 years.
Yeah. But I mean, It's a huge number of trees that were manufactured.
Millions.
Millions, exactly. I mean, we ran that 24 hours for I don't know how many years it would go. And we run it year-round, just built every warehouse around. Seriously, when customers would come in, Western Auto would get their first opening order. It was a trainload of Christmas trees, not just their toys. It was just Christmas trees. I'm getting ahead of myself here a little bit, but I'll bring Firestone, Goodrich, the same way. All of these companies, and that's one of the things which I forgot about here, when I moved to Ohio, took over the territory, I said, I want to live in Akron, or close to it. 3 reasons. Firestone, Goodrich, Goodyear. People look at me and say, why would you want to go there? You know, make tires of that? No. But remember the little Goodrich store down here on J Street, across from the police station, Christmas time? Tires go out of the front door. Who buys tires in Christmas, at Christmas time? You're buying toys, is what it gets down to. Not tires, not auto goods. They clear out all of the tires, all the stuff that they sell 11 months, 10 months out of the year, and put in toys, put in Christmas trees, Christmas decorations. They were the first real discount houses that you had in this country. And Firestone had over like 5,500 stores. Goodrich had equivalent, just about the same. Goodyear not as much. But all I'm trying to say is that was a huge, huge market. That's where we moved. And I say that their orders would come in, and we would get trainload orders at the time. So what we did, we were saved by Modern Coatings not lowering their prices, keeping them up high, signing a license agreement. Now we had free reign really to run. And by the 3rd year, now we hit the peak of the market, which all new product does. We thought we had a product for 3 years. If we got 3 years out of it, it'll pay for itself. You'd make money on it. Well, this thing went for 13 years. It was the last year that we made aluminum trees. And it's, I say, it was a real experience that a person had, and it was amazing for the customers that we got into. The other good thing on this, Norb, and I tell you, as an ex-competitor with Miro, what really happened and helped us, being that small little company, toy line, very small, houseware line, trying to get every order we can and so forth. A lot of our companies that wouldn't buy from us, all of a sudden they're customers because they want the aluminum tree. And I remind the buyer, that's right, we gladly want to sell you. We will sell you everything, including our houses and our toys. And all of a sudden we had the door open, and we got into more toy accounts, more houseware accounts than we ever had. So it's just a wash each other's back, so to speak. You help me, I'll help you. And it took our business and just expanded our customer base a huge amount. And I see things like this, you don't think about the side effects, but it does happen. The other thing that we did, you can probably say, what really were the reason for the success of aluminum especially, when we had a lot of competitors out there on trees, a lot of things took place. We had customers to sell, which we were selling. Right here we go. Well, the first thing I want to say is here, you may not remember, we were bought out by Kraft Foods probably 15 years after the aluminum tree was here. The company was sold to Kraft. And if we had been a member of Kraft at the time, knowing how they work, and it's a great company, a very successful company, and you learn from it, how they operate, a large company like this, and how you justify things and so forth. If we had to do that with this aluminum tree in 75 days, we never would have been in. Really. So that was one of the good things that just happened, out of the things. But as we did, we got all of their patents, which was good. Let's see here. The engineering department. Dick, your crew did a great job. There was no question about it. And again, 75 days, but not only then the ongoing product that we brought out in the line. things like the tri-light over here, the satellites that you see down here, electrical products, which we were never in, this type of thing. Little things that happened after that really made, this was developed by Modern Coatings in one of their patents. They took, in splitting the foil here on this band, they slid it, but also crimped it. So you got little flat spaces on here. And that gave you this curl effect, what we call the pom-pom. We had that. So you had new product coming on all the time. We came out with colors. You got the pink tree over here. We had gold, blue, and green, as well as the silver tree that you had in all the sizes. The other thing we did, the compact competition, you can see the difference here. This is a 4-foot promotional tree up front. Here's our first one, the deluxe tree. So we got different price points to work with. All of these things work together, and that was on each line of each size of tree that you had. It got to the point where, like I say, we thought 3 years, it got to 13 years altogether. It was just probably one of the most interesting things in my life that a person goes through, and it's amazing how this thing keeps stretching out. I just put together here some notes, interesting side notes related to the aluminum tree. Is type of customers we sold, like I say, the tire companies, Western Auto, Oklahoma Tire, right across the country. Never thinking about them, at first, that they could be a possible customer. That's the benefits, as I said before, picking up new customers. Our customer base increased considerably. I think it was the 7th year, so to speak, Wes Martin came to us and said, got an idea for you. Now, if you think of this was like about 40 years ago. He said, you ever think about a fiber optic tree? Think about that. Who knew what fiber optics was 40 years ago? It's something you don't. Today you hear about it, it's all over the place. But what fiber optics is that right here, here's a tree. You can see how each branch is lit up at the end. And fiber optics are a means of taking light and transmitting it through a very thin wire from one place to another. You got it in your automobiles, you got it in electronics, you got it in Christmas decorations, you got it in all types of operations that you have. But Wes came to us and he had a few of the fiber optics that he got as samples. Put a light people, a little thing behind it. We said, that looks great. Why don't you make a sample and price it out? He made a sample, a 4-foot tree. Fiber optics. Brought it down to us and said, isn't this nice? Beautiful. We said, it's great. What's the makeup and so forth? We're going through everything except one thing. Price. Okay, we said, what's the price was? What's our cost? He said, well, it's going to have to retail for about $1,000. But we said, we'll shelve that. We won't produce it at this time. But all I'm trying to get at is that here it is, how many years, 15 years later, whatever it was, this from mass use, mass production of it, applying it to how many different articles, different things, you got the price down to where this tree sold for $14.95. That's about a 2.5-foot tree. So a 4-foot tree at that time would have been $19.95, $24.95. It's not a $1,000 bill. So it's interesting as you go through the whole thing. But it's the other thing I just want to say here, a few things that are interesting. The fiber optic tree. A saying I always remember is, Dad, what's a green tree? We're still living in Ohio, and we had just brought out our first green tree, which is the one in the back here. It's not, that's been, had quite a few miles on it. The tree looked better than what's standing right now. There's branches missing and so forth, but these, we made it, the trunk, the same design as the aluminum tree, but we had branches molded in Hong Kong. And these are polyethylene branches. You feel them. It looks just like a regular Christmas tree of that type. So in the process of it, we had this done. And the first year that we had it out, I had samples. We were living in Ohio. It's right before Christmas. We're staying home. I think we were staying home that year in Ohio. But we had a snowstorm. And I couldn't get out on the road. Jermaine and I are watching television in the family room. The two boys, the two sons at the time, were playing in the living room. I said, Jermaine, why don't we set up that green tree this year? And I think at first said, let's set up a Christmas tree. And I said, what about a green tree? Well, the boys heard this Christmas tree, and they came running into the family room. Said, yeah, let's set up a tree. So we're going down the steps to get the sample. And I said to something about the green tree. Butch, our oldest boy, stopped and said, Dad, what's a green tree? Because we've always had an aluminum tree in Ohio for how many years. And it was nice, an aluminum tree, because we'd come up to Wisconsin for Christmas, didn't have any worry about anything drying out or anything else. So here he looks at me, what's a green tree? So I explained it to him and we put it up. The other thing, I mentioned about Herb Feingold before. Herb was one of the fellows that told me to get out with the tree. And I'm in Hong Kong, going down to start the day. Elevator opens up. There's one fellow standing in the elevator, Herb Feingold, when I got on. He looked at me and says, Jerry. I went, Herb, how are you? He says, good. Remember the aluminum Christmas tree? Exact first words that came out of his mouth. I mean, that was like about 6 years ago. It just doesn't go away. It stays. It's unreal. Getting to the end here. The other thing that I wanted to say, as I told Jermaine when she was taking this out, I said, we all forget so soon. And what I meant by that is that we in the aluminum specialty company, the toy company, so forth, that same year that we brought out the aluminum Christmas tree, we brought out a new toy line. It was the Childrenware Miniatures, where we put plastic handles on them instead of the metal handles that Vero had, we had. We just took our toy line and upgraded it. Put on foil-covered packaging, the same as our labels, on the Childrenware labels, like this. People would come in and say, what's new? That's the first thing I always say, what's new? We've got a new line of toys. This thing did as much for us, customer base-wise, increased in sales, getting people new customers, as the aluminum tree did. The aluminum tree was a lot higher priced, so it gave us more dollars. But what I'm saying, we get so soon old and we forget. Even when it's new, I've talked to people now, nobody talks about that Childrenware line in 1958. Christmas trees. That's it. I mean, it's interesting that it just seems like it doesn't go away. The other thing, reasons for discontinuing the tree line. And at that time, we had green trees, we had the aluminum trees yet. The reason we got out of it was the same reason we got into the aluminum tree. Competition is, they're always looking for something. We're always looking for something. The aluminum tree was going down in sales. The bottle brush manufacturer up in upstate New York came out with a bottle brush tree in green and took over the business and knocked our plastic trees out, took the rest of the aluminum tree away, and it was the start of the green tree as you know it today. That's what it got down to. And that made the final decision of we're better off concentrating on toys. We know what we're doing there. We've got our inroads, we've got our customers, we've got everything going. Our market share was good, and we dropped out of the trees and stayed in toys. But good. Do you have any questions? Anything that you want to bring up or answer? Don?
Where were the toy shows at that you mentioned?
That was in New York City. At the time, that's an interesting question. Just a second here. How are we doing, Amy?
Oh, you're fine.
The toy show at that time, 1950s, actually from the war, after the war. Aluminum Specialty had a showroom in New York City at 205th Avenue. But it was an old hotel that was remodeled and made an office building out of it. This is 23rd and 5th, 205th Avenue. And our rep was in there, and Aluminum Specialty had a showroom there. The first 6 floors, 7 floors was housewares and some toys, not very few. The top were all clothing people, and they were there. They finally ended up, enough toy people needed places because we were at the toy show. We actually showed in hotels. That's where the main show was. Like 5 hotels around New York's, Manhattan area, and take over all those hotels. Today, well, they actually expanded from 205th Avenue to 1107 Broadway, 2 buildings next to each other, big buildings, put a crossway over. Today, those buildings are closed down. The whole market has shifted from the U.S. to Hong Kong, and now mainland China. And what you have right now, if I were in the business yet, I'd be in Hong Kong today, because the toy show over there, they start working in October for the next year. October of last year were the first showings. Then they come back in January and catch the last people, and you've got your listings by March 15th, March 30th, like this. You know what you're going to supply. So it's going to change so completely. So everything is in Hong Kong now. Anything else?
The lights and the color changing lines that went around like that, did Miro make them or did they market them? Or was that someone else?
Well,
Not Miro, I mean.
yes. Here's the interesting part about these. We call this the satellite, right here. Take a look at this. You got 4 color lights. Take a look particularly at the stand down below here. You can see this. We designed this, engineered it, put it together, brought it on. I think it was the second year that we were on. 1960, we brought out revolving tree stands as well to make the trees go around. Everything you needed for the stand and accessories. Electrical. This thing took the market by storm. The satellite. It was so completely different. It was encased. It was airborne. You needed it in front of the tree to make, to illuminate the tree. So you wanted something good. What they had on the market at the time was just a spotlight with a wheel in front of it and a motor on it. Exactly. That's what it was. We charged $4.50 for that. We sold $4.50. Was it $9.95 retail market? So of course, if we had the second year, the third year like this, costs go up. The increased price on it. People see you got to keep the same price, or you can't raise it so much. Like this. Okay, this is one of the big mistakes we made, and there were some. We took and changed the unit to get a lower price. You notice the stand on here? That's a cover for a 2-quart saucepan. That's exactly what it is. It's a cover for a 2-quart saucepan. So we put that on. Kept the $4.50 price, took it out to the market. Everybody looked at it and said, that's dumb. We lost the business. It just went away because of that change right there. It's funny how things work. So it's, anything else?
How much capital investment did it take to tool up for the Christmas tree?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear about it.
How much capital investment for tooling up?
That I don't know.
I don't know the actual cost. This is very, very minimal. Again, because you're in a small community, we help all industry. Let's see, we had Paragon make the electric motors.
Right.
I'm trying to think where's Relevance. I mean, what I was going to remember. Then Kaufman was the one that developed the machinery to slip the foil. Leonard Kaufman was just a genius. But I went to Leonard and he said, sure, I can make that when you want. Well, I would say in about 2 weeks' time, he had designed the machine, built a sample, that was it. And that's the technique. How to slip the foil, particularly the foil cannot be permanently clinched. It has to spring back the whole thing. So there was that. I'm trying to think of, Weyerhaeuser came up with the carton. It was all local people primarily that helped us do the financial put together of machinery and the equipment. Good for the community.
Okay.
Just a couple of commentaries. I worked there for 3 summers, 1 year on the day shift and 2 years on the night shift while I went to college. And men from the firemen rode with other people and so on. And it was almost entirely women that worked there. I think, a few foremen and that kind of stuff. It was almost entirely women. And it was a real cross-section of people. It was very interesting because I think some of the firemen, for example, it was their first job that they'd ever done and that kind of stuff. And it was my first job. And I made, I think the starting wage was $95 an hour, 95 cents an hour. And I think I ended up with $600 on a night shift at $1.11, if I'm not mistaken. And then, of course, there was some incentive paid in the fast production setting. But it was a real interesting experience. And as a result of that, I could make enough money in that summer employment to primarily support my college education for the next year. I had to have jobs in Madison too, but it was primarily to support my college education.
Good.
I got a question in regard to the center post that supports the branches. Is that wood or aluminum, and who put the angular holes at the various degrees?
Well, it's wood.
But
John,
Wes Martin designed the hydraulic machines that drilled all the holes.
Okay. And is that a wood or aluminum shaft?
I know that's wood.
It's a wood shaft, okay.
Covered with aluminum foil.
Okay.
Now, that was one of the patents that modern coatings had, was that you could drill these holes all at one time, which put together, and could get the right angle and angle them down so that when you put this one size branch, so you just lay your branches out, pick one up, and put it in. You start at the bottom, started at the bottom and worked up to the top.
That's why capital investments, though, were so minimal, because we designed our own machine, had our own machine shop built them. Leonard Coughlin was actually the only company that built some machinery for it.
Yeah.
Well, along these lines, when did you go to the true taper, where you're offering the customer branches of different lengths?
That was right at the end. The reason, when he's talking about the true taper tree, there was a company in Chicago called I forget the name, but Regalus, something on that order, Regalus Manufacturing. And what they did, instead of having one branch, one size, they actually built a tree starting with about, like a 7-foot tree. That 7-foot tree would probably have 8 different size branches in it. And so they would go down very full, but they picked up that high price market. And they went very full with it, and it was all, tapered out like a regular tree would look, more so than what you see right here, with a single one-size branch. But what we did, we brought it out towards the end with the idea of, do we keep the metal tree going and keep getting production enough to keep the factory running and everything else, by having the promotional tree, the regular aluminum tree, and then a very high-priced tree. Like I say, you try all these things, and that 1 in a million shot of that tree right there, nothing else would replace it. And it still doesn't replace it to this day, is what it gets down to. Good, anybody else? Oh.
When did Miro start? Because I have some Miro trees and they have an aluminum trunk, and their branches are various lengths as well.
No.
Miro got into it later?
Like a year later.
Oh, just a year.
Yeah, because I was still in Ohio when they came in with it. It was probably like 1961.
But they never produced the line.
Oh,
No.
I know because I worked at both.
Anything else?
just a side point, about 2 days ago, a seller on eBay from Manitowoc sold that one of those wall decorations on eBay. 2 bidders. When the first bidder, the starting bid was $50. The first bidder threw $100 on that, and of course, your extra money is held back. So it looked like that was going to go for $50. A second bidder came in with just one more bid and bid somewhere over $100 and took that wall decoration, and the bid increment was $250. So that decoration went off of eBay 2 days ago for $102.50. 2 days.
I'm glad you brought that up because I forgot about it. The wreath up there, and there's on the 2 doors on the entrance, there's 2 wreaths on there. That was part of the product line that we expanded into, of making wreaths. I mean, we had one tree that was flat against the wall. I mean, it was flat against the wall. There was a reason. It was more of a decoration piece than a tree, per se. But it's, any other questions?
Did you ever make a bowl wreath?
Sure. We had the pink.
No, the wreath. Yeah.
Yes, we did.
I think I might have one.
$105.
It's an interesting point you bring up. It reminds me of something. These wreaths, right? We made them in silver. We made them in gold. There was, like 2 or 3 price points that we had. But in the process of talking about the aluminum tree, it became anxious. What happened was when we brought out the colored trees, the gold was the biggest seller. Silver was by far, way ahead of anything, no matter what you had. But gold was number 1. Green, blue, pink were like all together. Very little. The only thing that made the gold and where they used it was in store decorations, places where you wanted something that was different looking, completely different. And that was big. And I saw different decorations around the country and traveling, where they'd have a store window, and they'd have a background, a darker background, and that gold tree, no other lights on it except lights just to light on the tree. Absolutely, get your attention right away. But that was never as big, other than I wish it sold as many as Charlie Brown's pink aluminum. Did you see that? But the other thing I just want to say is, any other questions? Otherwise, I'm going to wrap this up. Amy's chomping at the bit here. The other thing I just want to say about this whole thing on the aluminum tree is that luck, being at the right place at the right time, always works, and everybody can use it. If you happen to be that lucky, and that's what we were, very lucky. Lucky that we had people.
A good salesman.
And but anyway, here we are 50 years later, still talking about the aluminum tree. Want to do it again? I would love to do it sometime in the future. Good, thank you very much.